Hello again and welcome to the Memoir channel. My name is Nikki Smart and today I'm going to be talking with Michael Shandler about his memoir, Karma and Kismet, a spiritual quest across continents, cultures and consciousness. So this memoir encompasses a large portion of Michael's life. We start when he's a young boy. He gets sent to a school in an area where he can't actually speak the language, goes on to become a bit of a hippie and experimenting with drugs, and eventually is on a big spiritual quest and booking tours for Ram Dass. So let's go speak to Michael and find out more. Hi, Michael, and welcome to the Memoir channel.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Wonderful. So your memoir hasn't actually come out yet, has it?
It'll be out in July. July 21st is the pub date.
All right. And I was going to say, it encompasses quite a large portion of your life, right? This is spans quite a big part. What would you say is the main theme of your memoir?
I think, if I had to sum it up, the main arc of the book is, I guess I'd call it father hunger, is wanting to get complete with my dad. And,
Yes.
that's why I started it where I did and why I ended it where I did as well. And also I think I had a kind of, I hate to use the word because it sort of cheapens it, but a kind of a miraculous reconciliation. And what I wrote there really was not a how shall I say, an exaggeration. It really did happen like that. And it's kind of amazing.
It was kind of amazing. I mean, the ending too, I'm not going to say because I don't want to give anything away, but I mean, the end is pretty amazing.
Yes, it really is. So I have to say that, and really, even though, of course, my desire to find myself and where I belonged, etc., drove me, underneath it all was a real desire to get complete with my dad. With my mom too, to some extent, but much more with my dad.
Yeah. No, I mean, I got the feel that you were quite driven by that and that you were willing to go to great lengths of exploration to find answers.
Yes. Yes,
but let's start more at the beginning, because I'd like to know a little bit more about, going to this Afrikaans. I mean, that must have been so difficult to just suddenly no one speaks the same language.
Right. It was very, how shall I say, it was tough. There's no doubt about it, but I'm the kind of kid that adjusts, and I found that always adjusting, kind of, going with what's happening and making do somehow.
Yeah.
Is really what happened. And
I mean,
later, if I still have a chance to read, I thought perhaps I would read just it's very hard to choose, by the way, a brief section in this book.
Yes.
But I thought that perhaps I could read, when the time comes, read from where I actually arrive at the boarding house for the first time and I meet my roommates.
Sure.
Kind of,
I mean, we can do it right now. I mean, there's no order to this.
No, as you wish,
because I mean, I thought we would start exactly there with the whole boarding school, being in this Afrikaans boarding school and being like a complete fish out of water. And one question I would have is, how long did it actually take you to be able to understand enough that you could actually communicate?
I would say, well over a year before I could kind of, really basically follow simple conversations. It was about a year, and maybe longer than that before I felt competent to just jump in. But eventually it kind of clicked, and I did. And even as I mentioned in the book, my Afrikaans teacher was pretty amazed, and he called me Boerejood, which, as you know, and maybe people watching this won't know, basically means an Afrikaner Jew, which is a kind of a semi-compliment in that context.
Yes. Now, what sort of like long-term, I don't know what, I don't want to say damage, but or whatever it is, what kind of long-term effect do you think that having that year of really struggling to understand, what do you think that did for you? If anything, maybe it did nothing, I don't know.
Good question. What do I think it did for me? Well, I suppose it honed my, what I would call my survival skills, just realizing I had survived another day somehow, even though there were days in which I was not at all sure that I was going to survive to the next day. But I think that's what it did for me, is it toughened me up in a certain way. And I realized I could survive, that I did have a few friends, a few allies who would help me. And including in the first year that I was there, the boarding house father, whose name was Wan, as I called him in the book. By the way, I didn't mention this because I'm getting sort of was getting a little wordy. It was 85,000 words already, and I had to kind of cut down. But the reason that his name was Wan was because he had a speech impediment, and he couldn't pronounce his real name, which was Meneer van Rensburg. So he couldn't pronounce the fun.
The fun. So it became Wan.
Everybody called him Wan.
Well, you know what? Why don't you read that first section? Sure. And it's got all those lovely Afrikaans words in that I was enjoying so much. And why did they all have nicknames? I thought that was so strange too.
It was a completely foreign thing to me also when I arrived, but everybody had a nickname. Yeah. There were a few boys who didn't for some reason, but they stood out, and that was kind of their trademark, is that they had regular names, but everybody else had a name, and usually often named after an animal or a characteristic of an animal.
Yeah,
something so very, very visual.
I'm going to put you in speaker view so that it's all you. Here you go.
And perhaps I should precede by saying that I had gone to the oldest school in South Africa, the South African College School, and was being groomed to be, I guess what you'd call an elite English South African. And all was going swimmingly until I got to grade 8, standard 6 as we called it, and I began to fail. And so my father reacted, not quite knowing what to do with me, I suppose, by sending me into the hinterland of the Cape Province to a place called Oudtshoorn, about 300 miles from Cape Town. And this is sort of the section where I arrive at the boarding house, and I'm taken to my room by one of the other boys, whose name is Kaken. So Kaken says, "Your room." 6 rickety wooden beds are positioned barrack style in two rows opposite one another. Each bed is covered in an identical faded yellow bedspread. 6 narrow floor-to-ceiling cupboards take up the entire wall to the right of the door, each cupboard guarded by a prominent lock. Kaken points to one of the lockers and says, "It's mine." I put my suitcase down. He shows me to my bed, and I'm introduced to my roommates. Diagonally sits a boy with narrow waist and shoulders. He has a pimply face with a scraggly beard, a pipe clamped between his teeth, and another weird nickname, Katderum, catgut, like they use for stringing tennis rackets. He's a senior, but extremely self-conscious about his English, blushing with embarrassment at his attempt to speak a few sentences. The others laugh at his effort. Directly opposite me, another lanky boy with white skin, translucent blue eyes, and hair the same color as his face stands by his bed. His nickname Spook means ghost, and it provides an apt physical description. Next to Spook's bed is a boy with a wrinkled skin resembling an old man's. The tip of his nose turns up prominently as though twisted into that position at birth. His buzz cut accentuates the prominent shape of his skull. His small, roomy eyes complete the picture. His nickname, Renoster, Rhino, fits. He's also a senior and tries to speak English, waving around an unlit pipe. My 4th Afrikaner roommate has a massive purple birthmark covering half his face. I'm afraid to look at him, concerned I'll be accused of staring. His nickname brands him, Moerbey, Mulberry. I find it hard to call him this cruel nickname, but I need not worry. Moerbey is a cheerful soul and accepts his nickname without embarrassment or resentment. I'm pleased to learn that the only other English-speaking boy in the boarding house has a bed in the corner next to mine. Mike claims he's 17, but he looks at least 22, with thick bottle glasses and a grizzled and pimply face. How's it, football? He yells, calling me an asshole with a skew grin. Got any wine? I want to get pissed. Can't believe I'm back here in this bloody place again. Hey, got a girlfriend back home? He laughs raucously as he sticks his thumb between his first and second fingers in the lewd South African gesture for sexual intercourse. Ach, shame. Hey, how old are you, boy? You just a baby, a little snothead. They chased you out of Cape Town, hey, you little carpenter. What did you do? Steal cars? Are you a fuck-up? I don't quite know how I'm supposed to take this, but I find it funny and laugh, which goes over quite well. I'm grateful to have someone to speak English with, though I'm not sure about this guy. Do you speak Afrikaans? He asks. I just know a few words. Well, you came to the right place, eh? You can't help learning Afrikaans around here, mind you. They're supposed to teach in Afrikaans and English, but don't you believe it? It's all Afrikaans. Then Mike steps forward a few feet and, leaning into me, tells me quietly, look, there's some bliksems, real bastards in this bloody place. You have to tell them to futsa, to fuck off. You have to watch out, eh? There's no place for moffies or fairies or softies here. He lies back on his bed. He's told me a lot, and I feel he will be an ally, if not a close friend. I'm in a new world, one I could not have imagined and would not have chosen for myself. But it is my new world, and the first thing I will have to do is learn Afrikaans.
Yeah. I mean, wow. And you know what? I haven't thought of that for a very long time. That we used to call them a toffee, right? It was like, fut for yourself a toffee. I mean, he sounds like a lot of fun. But yeah, I mean, it's great. I really felt for you because I knew exactly the sort of mentality you were dealing with. Right. But yeah. Okay, so let's move on. And then I feel like you went from there, and then now you sort of went into your hippie phase.
Right.
And things got really interesting for you when you started doing these drug things. Right. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Yeah, well, the thing is, I came from South Africa, which in 1967, 1968 was, and particularly Cape Town, was still kind of a backwater place in a way. It was beautiful, there's no question. Mm-hmm. I still think Cape Town's, arguably one of the most beautiful cities in the world. But it was a backwater place. People were, we didn't have any exposure. I'd never been out of Cape Town in my life until I went to boarding school, and never been beyond probably 80 miles to a coastal town called Hermanus. That's as far as I'd been. I was very, very, what's the word, provincial, very, very, unknowledgeable about the world, had no idea really. So yeah, so my friend who I trusted very much said, come over to my house such and such a day. And I went over there and I was really afraid. I mean, I didn't want to be, but I was. That was the truth of it, because it was sort of a big unknown. And I knew also that it was a kind of a rite of passage for, kids of my age and so on. So went over there, and without much ado, he gave me the mescaline. I took it, and then we kind of just hung around for about 20 minutes doing nothing, just relaxing. And then suddenly I felt this very, very powerful, it's hard to explain, but a powerful force taking me over. That was far more powerful than my will. Even though I said, I'm going to control this, there is no way that I could control it. No way. Mm-hmm. And I felt, I think I described in the book, I felt like a python was constricting me and that I was dying. And then it came to me that the secret to this whole thing was surrendering, really, just letting go and let this python kill me if that's what it was going to do. And when I did that, when I understood that, there was a kind of a release, and everything changed after that, except that my habit was to want to control. So I would keep going back into trying to control. And as soon as I did that, the python would overpower me.
That's so interesting, isn't it?
It's very interesting. And
like a life metaphor there for you.
It truly was. And that's part of what made it so powerful, was the realization that there are forces in life, you can call them what you will, that are far more powerful than you, that you don't understand, that your rational mind can think about, but not really understand fully, and can certainly never express, that there's something beyond something beyond the rational mind. There's nothing wrong with the rational mind, but it's a tool. And from the place of having ingested this powerful drug, which expands your consciousness, you become aware of many, many levels of consciousness that you were not aware of before. I began to understand. And it was the beginning, actually, for me of, getting into, what I'll call spirituality, which, frankly, since that time, that was in 1968, toward the end of 1968, has really been a lifelong, it's an ongoing search, if you will, an ongoing exploration. It started then, it awoke, the experience awakened me to that possibility. But then after that, it was, and I went back many times through similar routes, trying LSD numerous times and other psychedelics. But in the end, for me, and this isn't true for everyone, but for me, it was mostly about, I wanted to practice that I could do every day, that would take me on a journey that had a tradition. In my case, again, I'm big on traditions. I like traditions, and I like the history. I like the fact that my ancestors have been doing these, or ancestors have been doing this for a long time. Something about that appeals to me.
Yeah. So I think somewhere in the book you said that I don't know, I can't remember the name of the man, but he said to you, you only needed that first trip.
Yes,
right?
Baba Haridas, yes.
Yes.
On the very first time I met him, he was Ram Dass's teacher in India. And this was the first time I met him. He had come to live in California. And I had tried to get to India to be with him there, but I couldn't. The Indian government refused my visa because I was South African. I still had a South African passport in those days. Yeah. So he said to me, and I was sitting 4 feet from him. He said to me, "How many times have you taken LSD?" And of course, his association with Westerners, with Americans really, had come through Ram Dass, who was, as I said in the book, or explained in the book, was Dr. Richard Alpert, the cohort of Timothy Leary. So he knew plenty about drugs. And he arrived at Haridas as this, diminutive little yogi in the jungle of the in the Himalayas, and now he's interested in getting into yoga and meditation. So, and Haridas said to him at that time, LSD is like a Christ in America awakening the youth. And I thought, yeah, that sounds right to me. So it was kind of shocking when I actually met him, and he said to me, "How many times have you taken LSD?" And I said, "Well, I can't really remember. I don't know, 15, 20 times. I don't know. One trip sort of merges into another." And he said, "You learned everything you needed on the first trip."
Yeah,
so
interesting.
That in itself was
very interesting. Shocking. Yeah. I think one of the things I found a little, almost disappointing a bit, is that there was so much ego involved in the spiritual community. I would have thought that the whole point of the spiritual thing was that you were losing the ego, not getting more of it. So
that's the theory, right?
But
yeah. No, they're very, very confusing times. People taking strong drugs, sometimes coming out of those trips thinking that they maybe were more enlightened than they really were, and so on. People thinking it's sort of, instead of it diminishing their ego, in some ways it emboldened aspects of their egos. Really somebody who was a great tripper, a spiritual being, and so on.
Well, it was all fairly new to the Western world at that point.
It was very, very new. We were completely naive, and yes, very much so.
Now, let me ask you, what age were you more or less when you reconnected with your father?
I think I was in 1983. I think I was about 34.
And that's when things started sort of going on to a better field.
Well, we had no contact for 16 years at that point. I think you probably read in the book that I intervened between my parents My father was periodically a violent guy, and you know, at least on 2 occasions had beaten my mother up. And the second occasion, I was 19 years old, and I intervened. So, and then after that, really, we had no contact for 16 years, even though I tried to reach out to him. He essentially ignored my all of my letters, and they were letters in those days. There were no email.
Sure.
And then the day that I received my doctorate, I was so excited that I thought, you know, Dad would really, he would love to, this, you know, it's so like me, the kid that failed Latin in grade, the one that was sent to boarding school, the no good Nick, the one that was kicked out of the army. Suddenly he's, you know, he's calling from the United States and saying he has a doctorate now. So you know, so I called South Africa, and his secretary said, well, he's in the United States on a business trip. That in itself, that coincidence was bizarre, to say the least. It really was.
And I mean, and so then you had a long time to have a relationship with him.
Yes, we had a good I would say 15 years after that point. And then, you know, as I wrote, I don't want to give too much of the book away, but he kind of summoned me to South Africa, and I went, and we won't say what happened.
Yeah. So when you started writing, did you sort of have an idea? Did you have sort of a roadmap of where you were going to go, when you were going to start and end?
I knew at some point that I had a remarkable story vis-a-vis my father, and I wasn't really sure, and I knew what the main arc was, that essentially I intervened, estrangement for 16 years, had a kind of a miraculous reunion, a pretty good relationship for about 15 years, and then we'll leave what happened, we won't say. So I knew that in itself was kind of remarkable, and I also was told, in fact, Marion told me at one point that it was unusual for men to have a kind of completion that I had, which was usually if two men spar with one another, one or both of them says, well, you know, F off, that's it, I'm done. And they split, and that's how it is. But in my case, you know, we came together. So that in itself, so she was interested in my story from that point of view alone.
And this is just, let me just say, that's Marion Roach Smith that you're talking about.
Yes,
she's the memoir coach, right?
Yes,
exactly.
Yes,
okay, yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah,
yeah.
So that was helpful, I'm sure, to have her.
Well, it did. It was helpful to hear that actually it kind of encouraged me to continue. But while I was continuing, I realized that I had also, you know, something else had happened to me, is I didn't just sort of stay the South African kid.
Right.
A lot of things happened to me in the way that, in a way, prepared me on my side so that I could reconcile with my dad.
Yeah, I agree.
Work, frankly, I mean, my dad, it was pretty bad with my dad. Really bad. I think as bad as I've heard anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, isn't it a lovely feeling when you actually manage to do that part where you've let it go and you've forgiven, and you're not getting upset anymore, and you're able to like go, that's just who he is, and I can accept that.
Yes. Yeah, very much so. Oh yes. Very much so.
So how long did it take you to write?
A long time.
Yeah.
probably about 8 years of sort of not 100% writing all the time. There were breaks in between, but at least 8 years of, and I would say of those, probably 5 or 6 of writing, intense writing, and then stopping, and then writing again.
And did either of your parents get to read any of it?
No, both of them died before it was done. Yeah.
That's a shame.
My mom, for better or worse, died. She was still very angry with my father. She never forgave him. She never really forgave me for befriending him. And she, she couldn't quite, I don't think, square that I could have a relationship with both of them, that I could actually love both of them and accept both of them.
See, she needed to do one of those mescaline trips. She needed to be squeezed by a python so that she, so that she could understand. And it's all about, it's all about love, I think.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
When you're hurt, it's really hard to see that,
Yes.
And if you hold on to that hurt, then it's.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I was honestly very, very fortunate, I think, in what happened to me when I got to Canada.
Well, I mean, it's kind of unbelievable that you bump into these people who give you the exact thing you sort of need, and then you're immersed in the spirituality. I mean, you're part of you were setting it up for Ram Dass, right? Setting up tours for him. I mean, you're actually bringing it to everybody.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, and I was very fortunate with the people that I met on the way, who kind of took me under their wings. I was very, very lucky.
I mean, that's why it's Kismet, right? That's why it's karma and Kismet.
Absolutely. Right.
The title's very apt, yes. Well, I wish you the best of luck with it. I know it's coming out set in next month. So are you doing a book launch anywhere?
I'm going to do a book launch here in Western Massachusetts. I live in Amherst. So I'm going to do one here. All of the arrangements are right now in process.
Okay, so I'm going to put the website.
I'll be making announcements.
Okay, on your website, because I'll put that underneath here so people can see and they can come and support you. And
you put this. Sorry, Nikki. Will you put this hodgepodge of somehow together?
We had a bit of a hodgepodge today. Yes, I will put it. I will put it together. I will try.
Thank you. That's good. That's good.
And then what are you going to do next? Are you going to write more? What are you thinking now?
I may write some shorter pieces. I'm not thinking that I'm going to take on a book. This really is big for me. I'm not supposed to say your age, but I'm pushing 78. So, so for me, it's a big deal. But I would like to do some smaller writing pieces, perhaps. And I certainly would like to talk about the book in various forms. I'd like to read, like to do, podcasts and so on. So I think that's going to be my next.
And there's a lot there. I feel like there's a lot there to sort of unpack and talk about, because you've had such a, varied and interesting journey.
Yes.
Not a sort of an everyday occurrence thing here.
No. Right.
Well, anyway, thank you so much for coming and chatting.
Thank you. And again, my apologies if this is on my side. My apologies.
Don't worry about it. We'll make it work. I'm going to try. Okay, fingers crossed.
I really
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. And best of luck with your book.
Thanks.
All right.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.